So what if he says, all right, fair enough, bias is involved in every retelling of a historical figure, but we can take that into account and we can do our best to sift through it to come to a at least more accurate understanding of this figure.
Right.
But when it comes to the Gospels, you're asking me to believe that a man walked on water, multiplied fishes and bread. This is so insane. It's not just a matter of bias. You're asking me to believe that this is God who became man and was circumcised. It's so silly. So when I take that into account with the fact that it was written as religious propaganda, do you see why I might have a problem with this?
And of course I do. Right? If someone were to ask me what I think about accounts of other religious groups and other, figures from other religions, I'm pretty, critical and thinking about these kinds of things. So I recognize that that's certainly a valid claim. One thing that's really fun for me is participating in what's known as the historical Jesus field, the field of historical Jesus research. What is that? Well, the historical Jesus, we have to be clear, is not the same thing as the real Jesus, right? So history is hard. We have to recognize that doing history is extremely difficult. We have to be very modest about what we can claim. If somehow I were arrested for a crime, if I was arrested for murder, and I had to prove that I bought a donut at Old Town Donuts right around my house, and that was my only alibi, I would be in big trouble, because when they ask me if I want a receipt, I usually say, no, I don't want any evidence of this transaction. Right? So, right? So what I'm not talking about 2,000 years ago. I'm talking about last week, right? Now we have cameras everywhere, and so it's more likely that, you're going to have some kind of evidence, but not necessarily. And so even my reminiscences of like Thanksgiving as a child, right? What did we do on Thanksgiving in 1987? Well, I start thinking about that, and it can merge really easily with what we did in 1988, and so history, memory, these are challenging things to talk about when we're not discussing the Gospels, ancient sources, something of great stakes like the claims of the Christian faith. But one thing I really like about historical Jesus scholarship is it involves people looking at the same evidence and trying to make reasonable arguments based on the data that we have. And one of the great scholars who did this is somebody, I think I mentioned John P. Meyer. John P. Meyer did the work on Josephus I talked about. John P. Meyer was a fascinating man. He taught at Notre Dame for many years. I did get to know him. He had an encyclopedic memory. He had read everything, Matt. And he seemed to have just instant recall of all the ancient sources that he had studied.
I don't like him already. Because I lack all of that.
He was a truly incredible man. He was also a devout Catholic, a believer. You can find videos of his homilies online. People are sort of surprised by this.
Priest?
Yes, he was a priest. He was a priest, Father John Meyer. And he was a remarkable homilist, and he changed the lives of lots of people who lived at Notre Dame in beautiful ways. Now, Meyer wrote what was known as the Marginal Jesus series. It's 5 volumes. He never finished the project, sadly. He died a couple of years ago. Too young, I think. But anyway, and in the book, he puts forward the Historical Jesus Project as an unpapal conclave. That's how he describes it. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a Christian, we're going to take a Catholic, we're going to take a Jew, we're going to take, and later he added a Muslim, and we're going to lock them in the basement of Harvard Divinity School's library, and we're not going to let them out. And then until they can say, all right, these are the things that we agree about when it comes to Jesus. So his argument was, all right, there are things, despite whatever your biases are, we should be able to come to in terms of commonalities, or like a common denominator about who Jesus was. Now, I've critiqued Meyer's methodology in print, and so people know that I do have disagreements with the way he does his work. But that's a really helpful model for thinking about what Meyer did, because Meyer will sometimes say, oh, I don't think this is clearly historical, or he'll say, I don't think that, this is authentic. And I think a lot of people, when they read that, especially Catholics, they think, oh my goodness, he doesn't believe that the Gospels are reliable. He didn't believe that Jesus told the story of, I don't know, the Good Samaritan or something like that. No, that's not what Meyer's arguing. He's just saying within this discussion, within this very circumscribed discussion, I don't know that we can get someone all the way there on this particular point, right? So I love this field. I think it's fascinating. And my favorite scholar in that field is a gospel scholar named Dale Allison. I think most people would recognize him as one of the top 3 scholars who have written on this. He's written a ton on this. And I really like what Allison has the charm, the virtue of being willing to change his mind, which I really appreciate. He'll frequently write a book and say, yeah, I changed my mind from the previous book. But very few scholars have the courage to do that. In fact, very few people have the courage to say, I was wrong. I've rethought that. Thank you for your argument. I think I see things differently now. And what he argued when he was younger is that we can use these certain criteria, which John P. Meyer and others famously use, to say, all right, this is how we know something in the gospel is more than likely reliable. Again, we can't prove it. There's no video evidence here. There's no video recording. It's not like DNA evidence. We can't send some kind of CSI team back to Galilee. What's
funny is that even if there were, we would say it was AI.
Right,
somehow.
Exactly.
So even with the sorts of things we would count as evidence, they could always be questioned.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And at the end of the day, I think we need to recognize as believers that what Jesus said to Peter is important. Flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. Right? How does Peter know that Jesus is the Christ? It's not because Peter did extensive scholarly research and then he came to the final objective critical conclusion, yes, I have decided that among all the messianic claimants who are walking around in Galilee, you are the one who is true, right? So we have to recognize there's an element of faith here. St. Paul also says, no one says that Jesus Christ is Lord except by the Holy Spirit, right? So we have to recognize there is a dimension of faith. We're not just going to be able to somehow, win an arm wrestling match and, now you have to admit there's no other possible explanation. Jesus Christ is Lord, right?
Thank you very much for watching that Pints with Aquinas clip. If you like it, do me a favor, click like and subscribe, and please offer a Hail Mary for the work of Pints with Aquinas and all the people we're trying to reach. God bless you.